So when Xander and I originally met, I was basically full-time in my wheelchair as well, because my leg had just deteriorated. So at the beginning, we just actually were trying to work out, can two people in a wheelchair or two people with a physical disability actually like live successfully and date and be together? And like, because I think a lot of people had opinions. Like,
well, you said that you would never date a guy in a wheelchair.
Yeah. So did you. You were like, I'd never date a girl like that had a disability, because we also had a perception that it was like probably not the best. Like it would be fine, but like, is it the best idea?
Our parents told us, they were like, that is not.
They were like, you're just making life hard for yourself. But
cheers, parents.
They love Kirsty now.
Yeah.
Guys, welcome to Disabled and Proud. Kirsty and Xander from Our Chaotic Adventure. I am so excited to speak to you guys.
Hi, how are you?
Do you know what? I'm good. It's been a really good day. It's been super sunny, good vibes. I got coffee free today, which I love.
Oh,
so like,
wow.
It's been a great day. How? Okay, actually. So I spilt my coffee outside of the coffee shop, one that I had paid for, and it kind of fell out of my hand, and obviously I don't have the other hand to catch it with, and I was like, ah! And they saw through the window, they saw the whole thing happening, and they made me another one and brought it out to me.
Oh, but you paid for the original coffee?
I paid for the original one, but the original one fell, so they gave me a second one, and now
how much of the first coffee did you have?
Like, not very much, maybe about this much.
Okay.
And I screamed. I was like, no! And they were like, oh my gosh, what is wrong with this girl?
No.
How about you guys? How are you?
We're good. We saw that it was a nice day outside through our window, but we're currently planning our wedding, so we didn't leave the house.
We just had a lot of wedding admin to do.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. Guys, there is so much to talk about with you two. Honestly, loads. I'm so excited.
Might have to do a two-parter.
Do you know what? That can be done. Let's see how this goes first, though.
All right.
So, for both of you, actually, because this will be really interesting, how do you, both individually, so Kirsty and Xander, how do you guys refer to your disability when you're speaking?
So, you can't see it now, but I'm in a wheelchair. I have a T12 spinal injury, and so I'm paralysed from the waist down.
Yeah.
And I would just say I'm disabled. I'm a disabled person. Yeah, basically, I'm not particularly precious about the words that people use about me.
Yeah.
My favourite one that I've heard so far is, I read somewhere that people are pushing for it to be called inclusion seekers, which for me is an absolute nightmare of a word. But yeah, no, I would say I'm a disabled person.
We just normally go with you're in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And then for me, I have a below knee amputation, so just an amputee, or got one leg most of the time, got my leg chopped off.
I can't believe you've heard, like, I haven't heard inclusion seekers before, and there's something about that just makes me feel really ick.
Yeah, it definitely gives me the ick. I heard it, and it was just like, it made me feel, it was quite early on as well. I heard it like maybe a year into my injury, and I was like, this just doesn't portray me.
I feel like it makes it worse, because you're an inclusion seeker. You're not there, you're not included, you're trying to get there, but you're not. It's just...
It's all we want in life.
Almost not quite. Like, could do a bit better. Maybe not.
We're running away from the exclusion. Kind of thing.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's not.
Let's leave that
one. So interestingly, because you both kind of acquired your disability, there's almost that like knowledge of life pre-disability and then also life post-disability. And obviously you guys are together, so that must be really interesting for you both to kind of sit and compare and contrast. Do you guys ever do that between the two of you?
Well, actually, I mean, Kirsty's the childhood disability one, actually.
I'm both. So I was born with a disability, but then, which was talipes, but then only got my leg amputated when I was 22. So I kind of have like a weird mix of both, like growing up, but then my disability changing as well. Whereas you are just like nothing, and then bam, everything.
Yeah. And that must be like, even that conversation there, like your disability changing is always an interesting conversation, because for so long you think it's going to be one thing, and then all of a sudden like things start to chop and change, and you're like, I thought it was this one thing, and then the other thing. Yeah, I know, literally, right? Oh my God, it's like I did that on purpose. But it's super interesting, because you have that moment where it's, you know, my disability is going this way, and like we can go with this is where it's progressing, and I'm, you know, I can see the trajectory, and then it changes. And then for you, Xander, it's like this was not part of my life, and then all of a sudden you're literally like in another world that you didn't really
starting
probably
again.
know
You're
what's
like
happening.
a baby.
Yeah,
you're basically like a baby having to completely learn how to do stuff for yourself again. It's definitely, I think we've spoken a lot about our experiences to each other, obviously, over the time, but it's been quite nice to like, actually just not compare, but gain knowledge from each other.
I think when I was going through my amputation, it was like a really useful, just like to talk to you and be like, well, how did you feel when everything changed? Because that was like on a bigger scale. Like my disability was going to change, but I knew it was going to.
Yeah.
Whereas we got to speak quite a lot around, like almost the shock of yours happening overnight, and then like no idea of the disability world and what you're going to go into. Whereas I got to talk to you, and I had friends that have had amputations, and like I could kind of imagine my life before it had happened. Whereas you didn't get that chance. You woke up and you were like, oh.
And you also had, like, from 14 years old was the first time you actually spoke about amputation. So it took you about 8 years to get to that point anyway.
Yeah, it did.
So it's not like it was definitely coming, but it's still one of those things that there's one point that you have a leg, and then you go under the knife, and then you don't have a leg anymore. So
there's always that point.
And also, like, there is a grieving process as well. Even though you know the decision's coming, even though you know the operation's coming, like there is still that grieving, obviously. And that's also the same if you acquire a disability overnight. And it's really interesting, because I obviously I don't know what that experience is like. I was born disabled. I mean, am I going to become quote unquote more disabled, or am I going to have something else that flares up in my life? I don't know. But it's interesting having that premeditated, I'm going to have an amputation, to being like, I've woken up and now life is completely different.
And it's interesting, the grieving process. I'd say that the only difference between the two of us is the grieving process for Kirsty was probably before, and for me it was after. So you had a lot of the grieving process, you had a lot of the processing beforehand, and it's quite nice, because obviously I was able to go through that with her. When I had my accident, me and Kirsty weren't together, but I was able to go through that with Kirsty, and it's definitely a situation that brought us a lot closer together, and it's not a situation that I think many couples have to deal with. So it's an interesting talking point.
Yeah, I bet.
It's definitely one that's like, if we can do that, we can get through anything.
Yeah, for sure. So I usually like to go on to talk about like childhood, especially surrounding like disability. And this will be really interesting, because obviously, Kirsty, you obviously had a disability, and then Xander, you didn't. And
No,
what was
I didn't.
that experience like for you, Kirsty, like growing up disabled? What was that like for you?
I think I didn't have a label as a kid. I didn't think I was disabled. I had an older brother. Like, I went to a classic school, and just like, it wasn't really something that was, I think when I was really young, I remember being on the playground and being like, because I had different size feet, and like one of my legs basically didn't have all the right muscles and stuff, that it didn't grow quite as well as the other one. And I remember being on the playground being like, are your feet not different sizes? Like, that was like wait, not everyone's legs hurt? What do you mean your legs don't hurt? Like, it was like I'd never been sat down and been like, this is a problem. Like, it was just like, I went to the hospital, we did things, and like, it wasn't really like a major point that my parents made. They were like, just get on with it, I think was their like thought that would do me best. So yeah, I didn't really think I was that much different growing up. Okay.
You hear the dog barking?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hear the dog.
God, it's so infuriating. Your spiel is lovely though, like please carry on.
Yeah, so I think it was only really when I actually started playing sport that I realised that that I had a disability and that I would classify. I saw some Paralympians on the TV basically that had the same disability as me, and I was like, I can go to the Paralympics. I can do disability sport. So I remember walking away from like a really weird instance where I'd had my classification. I'd gone in the room like not really knowing if I was disabled or not, like, and then walking out, and then I remember like walking down the stairs with my mum, super happy that I was disabled, because I was like, this is amazing. I'm gonna go do all these sports, because I was playing sport, but I was really struggling to like keep up with able-bodied people and stuff. And I was like, oh, a whole new world has just opened up. Being disabled is going to be great. So, bit of a different impression, I guess.
I mean, Kirsty says she plays sport. Like, we'll come on to this, but Kirsty is absolutely insane at sport, and that's one of the reasons that I was like, I've got to bag this one. But yeah, she was playing rugby. What did you do? You played rugby.
I just did everything at school. Yeah, I played rugby, canoeing, football, netball, like whatever, horse riding, whatever it was.
And like
I just loved it.
A lot of these to like a national, international standard already, like able-bodied sport.
A good standard.
To like a super high standard.
But then it was like that hurdle of like, like it's not my ability that's like my talent or whatever in sport that was holding me back. It was just like physically can't keep up with other people.
Like you'd be on the rugby pitch and then you go sit down.
Yeah, they didn't like that.
In the middle of a game.
I was a winger, so I would just like chill out on the outside, but like nothing's happening. I'm just gonna take a sit down. My legs are hurting. I'll get up by the time that someone runs at me. It's fine. But the coach would like go mental at me and it's like, do you know how bad that looks? Like you can't just sit down in the middle of a rugby pitch. Like we're trying to play a serious game here. And I'm like, I am taking this seriously. I'm just resting.
Everything in my body is taking this seriously right now.
Yeah.
I just need a little seat.
I just need to sit down.
Give me like 5 seconds. I'll be good.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so funny. And also what I love about that as well is that classification with Paralympic sports is questionable at best for a lot of different reasons for a lot of different people. But I love the fact that you went into your classification, you came out and you're like, yes, like I can do this, like because like that's not a side that you ever really get to hear about or see. Because a lot of people are like, oh, like I can do it if I'm, under this and this, and it doesn't always work out that way. But actually, Xander, for you, whilst we were talking about that, it must have been almost like a rebirth for you when you came into this like world of disability. And what was that experience like for you?
So I think for me, so it's almost 6 years ago now. I was 19. I just got into med school. So I was in the first year of medical school, and then I just fell out of a tree. There's one day whilst studying for my exams, I just fell out of a tree.
You weren't studying in the tree.
No,
Were you like climbing for fun?
I was just climbing for fun. I wasn't drunk and everything. It was the middle of the day. It was just a really.
You're just walking the dog.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And I just fell out of a tree and broke my back, and then woke up from surgery. Well, I went through the whole process of going through A&E, and that was a bit hazy.
Yeah.
And then coming out of it. But I think one of the main things I realized at the time was that I was in a lot of trouble because of different aspects of my life. So, for example, like I said, I was in med school, so I was studying to be a doctor, and I was like, I can't be a doctor in a wheelchair. And I was playing rugby as well. I was like, I can't play rugby.
Yeah.
And basically just my entire life as I built it up to be. And I'd worked so hard in my life to get up to that point. And in 1 second, it just completely shattered.
Yeah.
And it was really hard to come to terms with. And also just being a 19-year-old that can't use their legs. I remember crying out, like, what 19-year-old can't use their legs? That's crazy. And now I've met quite a lot of them. But at the time, I just thought that's absolutely mental. This doesn't happen to anyone. Why is this? And it actually was really hard for me. I had a lot of friends come to visit me, and it was really nice. I didn't go into like the classic depression about the situation. It wasn't ever a situation where I thought that I can't see a way forwards, but I definitely didn't feel, I had that grief process.
Yeah.
And that lasted for a while. I remember just my friends would come, I'd be happy to see them, and then they'd leave, and then I'd be left with my thoughts, and I thought, I don't know how I can do this. And I didn't have, I'd say social media at the time wasn't as accessible as it is now. I'd say there's a lot of people, or maybe I just know how to do it better now.
Yeah.
But I started an Instagram account, just basically blogging at the start of my journey, called 6 Weeks in Bed, because originally I was supposed to have 6 weeks in bed and then I'd get better, but I didn't. But it carried on. But yeah, no, I had that, and I was blogging about that, and there was a couple of people at the start, like Ed Jackson. I don't know if you've come across him, but someone sent me his story, and he obviously broke his neck, but then he started walking again, and I thought, oh, okay, cool. That's, now I got all the stories of people getting better, and I thought, okay, that's what I'm going to aspire to, and I'll come back to it later. But I think that I think that's quite damaging at the start of like these journeys, because it's really good for them, but each individual's journey is different, and actually learning to accept where you are is the most healing that you can do.
Yeah. I think what you've just said there is actually really, really important, is that whilst these stories are incredible and they're great, and I'm like so happy for you if that is your story, actually when you are almost in that grieving period, just realizing that your life is completely changed, actually those stories can be quite damaging, because you're almost like pinning hope on something that might not or could never happen. And whilst it's happened for someone, there's that whole thing that's like, some people are the rule and some people are the exception. And quite often these stories are the exception, they're not necessarily the rule. But because of how like society views disability, the exception becomes the story, because it's you're overcoming this disability. Your life, you've become a quote unquote good disabled person because you defeated disability, and that makes you special. And actually we kind of need to stop that narrative, because it is very damaging.
And I think this is what I was going to say earlier, I think, and me and Casey has discussed it quite a lot, but it's the inspirational, when these stories get tagged with inspirational, like they are inspirational, but I also what I personally think is inspirational is people that go, like, don't get better but just carry on with their lives. And like for me, like for each person having someone that's in a similar situation to me, that's what inspires me to go on, not someone who's better or in a situation,
big triumph,
someone who's had a big triumph, or someone who's able to do things because they have more function than me.
And it's that whole idea of, like, as I just said, like overcoming disability, and you've become that like quote unquote good disabled person because you conquered it, and like, well done you. Don't get me wrong, that's incredible if that's your story, and I'm so happy for you, but it's not actually reality. And actually, by sharing these stories, whilst they're incredible, they don't actually help the disabled community at all, because then there's this perception that you can overcome disability and you can become better, or you can do things better, or why aren't you working hard enough so that you can become like non-disabled? And I'm like, it doesn't actually work like that. Like,
I think you can overcome disability, but I think that it looks different. It doesn't look like becoming more able. It just looks like becoming more able in what you're able to do. So you have a functional capacity, and actually being able to maximize that rather than trying to get something that you don't have. And that's how I think you can overcome disability, is by just doing the most that you can do.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good way of putting it, is that you're not actually like, you're not doing this whole thing where you're not accepting of the disability. You're actually, you're embracing it, and you're like, okay, this is what I can do now. And this is how we work now. And like, this is how we adapt, and this is how we move forward. But interestingly, you said that you were at med school and you were in like your first year, and then you said, I can't be a doctor in a wheelchair. And I was wondering, how did that then impact your career moving forward?
So the first person that I actually met in a wheelchair after my accident was a doctor. So that was awesome.
That was almost like the universe being like, shut up and get on.
Yeah, exactly. Like genuinely 5 days after my accident, A lady called Jen Warren. She's awesome. She's an anaesthetist. And it was also she was an anaesthetist working in a hospital. I was like, this is badass. If she can do it, I can definitely do it. So in terms of my career, I'm actually now, I'm about to go to a night shift in ICU. I know.
Yeah.
So doing this podcast, then heading off. But I'm just about finished with med school. I've got 2 months left, and then I'll be Dr. Vanderpoel. So
exciting.
Yeah, I've got to start earning some money soon, because honestly,
I can imagine being a doctor takes 7 years.
It's taken me 7 years. It takes the average person 5. But I've taken the scenic route. So
what is average anyway? Forget all about that.
Through no fault of my own, I'd like to add. But in terms of my career, I've done some awesome things as a result of my disability. I think my life has only got better as a result of my disability, really. Some things, if you're looking at the big picture, obviously things are slightly more difficult at times, but I'd say in general my life's got better, and I've had a lot of cool experiences as a result of it in my career and in my personal life.
Yeah. And actually, I want to pose the same question to you, Kirsty. How's your disability impacted your career, but also your sporting? Because obviously that's something that's been really important to you.
Yeah, I think I definitely wouldn't have reached the same level in sport or had as many opportunities in sport if I didn't have a disability. I think it's opened up a lot of different avenues that I didn't expect, and different sports. And also as well, I've just actually heard today that I received a place on a master's program for physiotherapy.
Amazing!
But I think the passion from wanting to become a physiotherapist was because of what I had as a child. I went through loads of physiotherapy and I loved it. I loved getting an afternoon off school and basically just playing sports. That was my main physio, was just getting strength up and learning how to use my body. I don't think that I think I would have a very different life if I didn't have a disability. I don't know whether I would be wanting to become a physio. I don't know whether that would be on my radar. I think it'd be quite different.
I love this guy so much. So I'm going to ask that really cringe question that you guys probably get all the time, but how did you guys meet?
A good one.
I'm going to give her a week first.
Okay.
I love this because then I can have this story with you, and then he's going to come back and I'll be like, I know everything. Tell me everything.
Do you want me to carry on?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Okay. Again, so without our disabilities, Xander and I would never have met. So we met playing wheelchair basketball at Loughborough. So that's where I did my undergrad. And then Xander, basically as a doctor, when you're very smart, not like the rest of us, you can go and do a degree in a year. So he did his whole medicine school, and then in the middle of it, chose to do an intercalation in sports science. So he came to Loughborough for a year, did his whole sports science undergrad in 1 year, whilst basically just us getting to know each other. We met, us dating, still smashed it, and then went back to med school just to finish that off because med school's very hard. So he needed a break and just did a sports science degree in his break, basically.
Just as you do.
Yeah.
Sounds
exactly.
My brain actually hurts hearing.
Yeah, he's very clever. But so we met playing basketball. Our university basketball team had basically just started up that year, and neither of us had either played before. We just went along to the trials and we both made the team. And then I think we both just found each other the most fun on the team. We just got to know each other quite well, and he ended up living the street next to me, where our uni houses were. And we just our friends, his friends became my friends, and we just kind of just had a really fun year at uni together at Loughborough.
And so in that year, were you like, where were you in your degree? Because obviously, like, wait, I'm completely assuming you might also have done your degree in a year, but like,
no.
average Joe Blogs like myself took 3.
Yeah, I did. Oh, he's back.
Hi.
Do you want this?
Hello.
Yeah, so I did my undergrad in human biology. So I was in my third year at uni. I also split my university, like each year of university, up a bit so that I could compete in more like elite level sports. Basically at Loughborough they allow you to go part-time for sports reasons. So I think I was on one of my like half years at Loughborough when we met. So I think I ended up having another 2 years.
But the thing is about at the time, Kirsty was doing athletics and she was competing for GB, and I was rowing on the like British rowing pathway. So neither of us had really ever played basketball. We just literally we just decided that
we both just turned up and thought we'd be great.
Yeah, and
I do that all the time. It's a real problem.
And then we thought that, because for me it was a bit of an escape of doing something just for fun rather than doing elite sport. I think for Kirsty as well, and you coming to the end of
so I think I'd realised that I wasn't going to be able to run anymore. My leg just wasn't good enough. It wasn't it was like impacting the training for athletics was impacting my day-to-day life too much. I just didn't have the capacity to do it all. So I was kind of just like searching for something that was off my feet, but still competitive and something that I would enjoy. And yeah, also a bit of a break out of like the intensity of elite sport. So like Bucks level basketball was like the one for us.
Yeah. And it was just nice to like, so we were both complete newbies to it. And we ended up finding like a wheelchair basketball club like an hour away. So we ended up having to like share lifts.
Unfortunately.
We have to drive it.
Guys, killer.
In the car.
Such a killer.
Kirsty was like, I found one. There was turned out to be one like 5 minutes away, but Kirsty was like, no, I found one about an hour away.
So then like every Thursday it would just be the two of us driving to training. And I'm like, no.
What a shame, another hour with me. Oh, you lucky soul.
But yeah, that's how we met. That was about 3 years ago.
Coming up to it.
Yeah.
And so when you guys met, so obviously like Xander, I've just heard about how you did a degree for fun in a year. Absolute lunacy. But like, you do you. I'm happy that's your vibe.
It was so much easier than medicine, to be honest.
That was his chill year.
That was my chill year.
So fun. So easy.
It was so easy. Like I did the least amount of work that year than I have in the other 5, so I was taking it.
Okay, so this is like makes me realise like you must be super intelligent, because the idea of cramming like a 3-year undergrad into 1 year makes me feel a bit ill.
Yeah, it was all right. It was okay.
It was a good time. I met my future wife out of it, and I recommend. But with that, so then I take it, obviously it could be completely assuming, did you guys then do like a long distance thing? Because obviously if you were still at Loughborough and then where are you at med school?
I'm at Bristol Medical School.
Okay, so like Loughborough and Bristol aren't really that close.
No. They're like a decent 2.5 hours.
3.
Etc. If you're driving fast.
Yeah.
So we had a year together. And then we started doing long distance literally like a couple of months before I had my leg amputated. So it was a bit of a so you were like coming up a lot to do all the appointments beforehand, and then when I had my surgery I went back to my parents' house, who live in Wales, but kind of on the border, so there's actually only half an hour from Bristol. So it was we were really fortunate, really grateful that it was like, even at a really difficult time, we weren't actually too far away from each other. Like you could still come over a lot.
I was very clever with so we have to have 80% attendance, and I was tracking my attendance rigorously. And I was like, if I get sick, if I have one sick day, I'm out.
Yeah, that's me done.
Yeah, that's me done. So I was like taking every single day that I could to go see Kirsty, and see if she was doing all right.
Yeah, but then I kind of had a bit of recovery, and then I went. So this was November. I had my leg amputated, and then I went back to uni in January. And yeah, and then it's just been long distance since then.
It's okay though.
But soon to end. Yeah. 7 weeks. Yeah. And we get married and we move in.
Interesting, because is that what made you guys want to travel together? Because you guys spent so many days, months, whatever, apart.
I think so. As part of the medical degree, we get 8 weeks that we can go and basically practice medicine anywhere that we want in the world. So I had this opportunity that I could go and find a placement somewhere.
Yeah.
Which is what made us want to travel.
Yeah, very early on, I started saving, and I was like, I'm coming with you.
Yeah.
I was like, that's not an option.
And we'd been to Barcelona the year before. Like that was our first taster trip to see is this something that is feasible, because two wheelchairs is
So when Xander and I originally met, I was basically full time in my wheelchair as well, because my leg had just deteriorated. So at the beginning, we just actually were trying to work out, can two people in a wheelchair or two people with a physical disability actually live successfully and date and be together, and because I think a lot of people had opinions.
Well, you said that you would never date a guy in a wheelchair.
Yeah. So did you. You were like, I'd never date a girl that had a disability, because we also had a perception that it was probably not the best. It would be fine, but is it the best idea?
Our parents told us, they were like, that is not.
They were like, you're just making life hard for yourself. But
cheers, parents.
They love Kirsty now.
Yeah. So yeah, we had quite a while of just figuring out, could we live life together? And then obviously circumstances changed a lot. Amputation, which again showed us because basically you had to do everything for me at that point. I'd literally just come out of surgery, so I couldn't do cooking and just whatever. It was just off the cards. She
still can't cook.
No, that's not true. That's mean.
Sorry, that's a lie. She can. Scratch that from the podcast.
But yeah, so I was just recovering. We had to work out can Xander basically just look after me, and all that stuff. And then we went to Barcelona before this, so we'd kind of worked out that we could travel a little bit with two wheelchairs. But we basically, whilst I was recovering, I hadn't even got my first prosthetic leg yet, I don't think. But we knew that this elective was on the cards, and I'd been saving, and I was like, I don't care. Whatever, whether I'm in a wheelchair or I'm not, I'm coming. We know we did it for a week. We did it.
We did it for a week.
So we can, we can do it for 3 months, and we'll have a great time. I was like, I know that even if I can't walk and we're traveling, we'll make it work. But it turns out that I did. I got my leg in between this time, because we travelled in the summer. So I got my leg in March, I think, and I had a couple of months to learn to walk before getting on a plane. But again, I think my mum was like, "What are you doing? You don't have a leg, and you're booking a 3-month flight to Australia. What?" Yeah.
The flight was long, but it wasn't quite 3 months.
Oh no, 3 months trip. That's what I meant. You know what I meant.
Interesting that you guys both of your parents you guys are making this really hard for yourselves, and actually you can almost see that you're do you know what, just because we're in this situation, just because one of us is a wheelchair user, just because I could be a wheelchair user, I might have an amputation and I might have a leg, doesn't make it any less that I shouldn't be going. I should definitely be having these experiences and seeing what this is like. And I love the fact that you guys kind of fuck you all. We're going to do it anyway. I don't care really what you say, because I think there's a lot of power in that, especially when we're talking about disability, because a lot of people have that perception, why make life harder for yourself, or why would you do that to make it more difficult? And it's not actually about making life more difficult. It's just about living and adapting, because we do adapt to the world naturally around us, whether we're conscious of it or not. And being able to document that as well, I think, is really important, because like you said, when you were going through like suddenly you wake up one day and you're now disabled, right? You're now paralyzed. Like, life looks completely different. But being able to then go online and find someone who looks like you is quite reassuring. So you guys being able to document that was probably provided a lot of people with a lot of reassurance that actually, like, two wheelchair users, or one guy with a wheelchair and another girl with a fake leg, that you guys can all travel together, and actually, like, it's sometimes it's a bit awkward, but actually it should never stop you from doing it.
And this, I think one of the things is that we realized is that very quickly, we realized we just have to give up like any dignity that we have. If you want to be doing these things, like, it doesn't look right.
Doesn't always look pretty.
So you just you just do it. Like, we and like you said as well, like, it's this, the bubble wrap concept of now I'm disabled, you need to wrap everything up in bubble wrap. And like, actually, there's been quite a few videos recently where like I've seen like people in wheelchairs going on the escalators, and for me, like, as someone who's done it, it looks quite scary, but it's just what you need to do sometimes. But then that gets posted to stuff like Lad Bible, and everyone sees it, and obviously everyone comes in with their opinions of like, no, you shouldn't be doing that. You're gonna fall.
Health and safety,
and everyone's now suddenly become like an expert on what is safe and what is not safe. And it's really quite like, it's sad, because I'm like, do you know what? They're just on an escalator.
Like, the lift's probably broken. Probably didn't want to be there anyway. Like,
like I was in London for the marathon this weekend, and then I went. The lift was out, but we were trying to make the train, so I bummed up the stairs, and then we got to the top, and then we couldn't get on the train because there was too many people on the train. So then I had to come back down the stairs, but I came down in my wheelchair, and again, it looks terrifying, but it's one of those things that if you can do it, like, you can just do it. But just because there's not enough people doing it,
it looks scary.
And people just don't know it. But I think if I did that, someone, like, if one person saw me, they'd go home, and then their opinion of wheelchair users might change. But if you just go out there and just do this stuff, you don't have to wrap yourself up. You don't have to wrap yourself up in bubble wrap. And I think, like, the medicalisation of disability is something that's really quite damaging again. Of like, you got to constantly be worried about these different medical aspects, and you do.
And almost like you have to fix it, because that's very much what the medical model, like, that's basically what it is that disability is something there to fix, and like, if you can't fix it, well, you fucked. Like, and that's very, that's super basic, and there's a lot more that goes into it, but that is, like, at base level what it kind of is. And actually, it was interesting that you brought that up, because I wanted to speak to you about how you, like, training to be a doctor and your disability. Does it make you sometimes view disability in like a medical way, or because you are now disabled, do you view it a bit more holistically?
No, I'd say it's completely the other way. I see disabled people now, and I'm like, come on, just do it. Like, like, I would definitely not give sound medical advice to a disabled person, like, by the book. Like, no, don't do that. Like, I'd be like, so watch out for this, but like, it's okay. Like, it's one of those things that I think I work with the university at the moment on improving the medical curriculum, and from like a disability point of view. So I'm the disability advocate for the equality, diversity and inclusion. Long name.
DEI.
EDI, but I basically I'm working with the university to improve that. And one of the things that I'm currently working on is we do what's called case-based learning. So we get like different cases, and you go through all the different aspects of the case, and you you answer questions about the person's different points in their care. So I'm currently working on creating a case about a medical student, basically my story. And that will allow other medical students who see this to then start thinking about, actually stop stop medicalizing disability so much, but actually looking at it like from the point of view of how do we maximize their living. Because the thing is, if these people are like sad, then they're going to have a whole other different like point of life. Like, so I saw a video once of like a lady in, I think it was one of these 24 hours in A&E kind of thing, and a guy had a spinal injury, and the doctor was like, do you know what, like, you can live your life, you can drive, you can go on holidays, you can do all these things. And I think if someone was there to tell me these things when I had my accident, it would have made things a lot easier. So I'm currently working with the university on trying to improve just the way, like, the over medicalisation, and it's a long process, and it's slow because
everything
systemic
is slow.
changes. Systemic change is not the one. But it's quite like a privileged to be in this position. Because also I'm also working on the application process for the medical school and the admissions process, and how they promote their like disability support. Because at the moment there is absolutely nothing on the website about disability support. It's all like it's. So if I was disabled, if I had my accident 1 year earlier, I wouldn't have applied to medical school. Like, I don't think that medical admissions is
geared up for that.
Open-minded.
Is that open-minded? Like, I might get an interview, but then I'm not sure I'd get a spot, because it's one of those things that you're just difficult. Like, you're a problem. Whereas I had a foot in the system and they were trying to jam the door, but I can't feel my foot, so it's fine.
So like, it is what it is.
So it is what it is. But it's so it's quite like, for me, I'm quite passionate about improving access to like the medical field as a career path for disabled people, because I genuinely think that especially medicine needs to have like a clear subsection of society. Like, you need to have a representative of every group of society in medicine. And I think that to fully be treated as a human and fully be treated for all the aspects of your care. So I think that my disability really brings a different point of view across. And whether it's directly with dealing with a patient, or if it's dealing with my colleagues, you're basically having a snowball effect. I'm either having a direct impact on a patient who has a disability, or knows someone who has a disability, or I'm having an impact on my colleagues who might then end up dealing with a patient with a disability. And I think it's one of those things that actually it's really important to improve that. So that's why I was quite like amped about trying to improve that, because I think it's an awesome job, and I want more disabled people to do it.
It's really interesting about what you said about like if you had become disabled a year before, you wouldn't have applied for medical school, because there's none of that like information available, or like if it is, you kind of have to like jump through a lot of hoops to get the right information. And it's really interesting, because I was thinking about, I had Dr. Hannah on this podcast. I don't know if you guys know her. Love her. She's fab. But she kind of like realized she was disabled also in her medical training, and that's when she was like, oh, like, I don't know if I would still be doing this had this happened to me beforehand. And it's a really interesting place to be, because I think you're right. I think, medicine does need a lot more diversity in it, and that includes like all areas of diversity, but particularly when it comes to disability, because disabilities can be so heavily medicalized. And being able to, like you said, that snowball effect, that holistic 365 view, rather than just you're a problem, it needs to be fixed, because like that is actually what the vast majority of medicine is, regardless of if we like it or not. It very much is, here is a problem, my body doesn't work for whatever reason, you need to fix it. Is it a band-aid? Is it a stitch? What is it? Disability isn't that. Disability is actually a lot more like a holistic view where we have to incorporate everything. And I think you're right. I think having that representation there is only ever going to benefit the whole of society. Like, nobody actually loses out from disabled people being in medicine, but also like disabled people themselves, because I think a lot of disabled people can really shortchange themselves when it comes to things like, can I be a doctor if I'm in a wheelchair, or can I be a doctor if I have some disability? Like, can I do that? And actually, if we don't see it, then we don't know what it looks like, and we don't try. But if there are other people out there paving the way, then sure we can. It just looks a little bit different, and just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong.
And it's hard as well, because like I've seen a lot of I've spoken to a lot of people. I genuinely have spoken to a lot of people that have said to me that I would love to do medicine, but I'm in a wheelchair. So, and they've said it to me whilst I've been in a wheelchair. I'm like,
thanks so much.
I'm surprised about the amount of people that still like will ask you or ask me questions when I'm like, they'll be like, oh, I'll see you as a doctor, and they're like, oh, can you do that? And I'm like, yes, he's doing it. It's like he's graduating, and he's like, oh, but can you do everything? And I'm like, they don't like.
Well, obviously you can't do surgery, you know.
Yeah,
I was literally just going to be like, he's not a
can't.
surgeon.
But even then, like, there are surgeons in wheelchairs, that is.
Yeah, people just presume that there's like whole areas of medicine that you can't do because you're in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
When I'm like, you know that he has to still pass the same exams as everyone else. There's not like a separate exam for like wheelchair doctors. Like they get like half a job to do or something. Like, I'm like, no, he's done everything the same as everyone else. Like he's fully capable of saving your life the same as anyone else. Like. But people just presume that, oh yeah, but you can't, surely you can't.
Yeah.
You can.
Actually. Yeah, it's very much that, like, oh bless, like, oh, like, can you do what I can do? And you're like, do I look like an idiot to you? Like, yes, I can.
I can actually do way more.
And also, like, you also did a 3-year degree in 1 year, so like you're probably smarter than a good like 90% of the population.
Yeah,
it's definitely one of those things. It's just that it's ignorance, definitely, and also like I don't think personally that there are many specialties that I wouldn't be able to do in a wheelchair, like. But everyone's like, oh, you need to make sure you do a specialty that's accessible to you. And I think one of the main things that I'm interested in is emergency medicine, like A&E. So it's like boom, boom, boom.
I think appears one of the least accessible. It's not like sat behind a desk job. You're like front of house, like critical situations, which like your personality is actually really great at dealing with that.
That's why I'm in a wheelchair.
I think you're in a wheelchair because you fell out of a tree.
The reason I was in the tree is because of my personality.
Like you're not one to shy away from stuff, and like I think having like a calm and collected, but also want to push yourself is like what you need in emergency medicine. Like you're not a sat behind the desk kind of person. Like, and I think as well, like being a front of house emergency is, I always think of like all the kids and stuff that you might see.
Yeah.
Like actually the impact of a child seeing a doctor in a wheelchair and being like, if they have a disability themselves or a parent, or do you know what I mean? Like maybe they've rushed in with a disabled child because they've had a complication or whatever, but actually being like, this is your now. There are like difficulties right now, but one day like your kid might be able to do something like being a doctor. Like that's not off the cards just because this is what the situation looks like currently. It doesn't mean that like that's your life sentence of like, you know, not being educated to a really high level and actually pushing your boundaries. Like, whereas I always think if someone sees you, that might change like what they believe about themselves.
Yeah, for sure. So I would love, because I bet you guys get some really bizarre questions. I would love to know some of the weird and wonderful questions that the public have asked you, just in passing, or maybe in your job, or maybe whilst you guys are traveling. I bet you guys got a whole host of really bizarre questions.
Yeah, the most recent one I'm getting at the moment. So I have a prosthetic leg. It's quite clearly a prosthetic leg. It's not like a skin color looks like a real leg.
It's not skin colored.
No, it's like full on metal carbon. And like genuinely, the last few weeks, I've had several people like tap my leg and be like, you can feel it though, right? And I'm like, no, that's metal. I can't feel metal. And they're like, oh, like I don't know whether they presume that technology is so great that they've made a way that I can feel metal. So I always end up using the analogy of like, if you put your hand on the table and I bash the table, like I can feel it in the same way that I can feel the like vibrations through the table. But no, like if you're itching my leg, like
not
nah. And AIDS, stop doing that, please. Like,
I didn't ask you to tap my leg, but I now tap yours.
What about you?
My favorite is so the other day I went to Boots, and this is not like an uncommon situation, but I went to Boots and I went in through the door to go to the pharmacy, and then got what I needed and then left. But as I was leaving, the pharmacist was like, "Oh no, let me get that for you." Bear in mind, like the desk was a good 10 meters away from the door, and I was like, "No, it's okay." And she's rushing. It's like it's a bit of a sprint to see who can get to the door first, whether like so that if they can open it for me or if I can open it myself. And then I opened the door and then left. But as I was leaving, she was like, "Oh, you've done that before, haven't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, no, when I came in to Boots, when you watched me come in." And I was like, "Do you know what? Like." And I had it the other day as well. I was in the hospital and I opened the door and someone was like, "Oh, wow, you're a pro at that." And I was like, "How what?
How do you expect me to get through this?"
Do you see the stethoscope and everything? I'm almost a doctor, and you're telling, and you're like my biggest achievement is opening that door.
Yeah. Don't worry about
really
all
low
of
bar.
the academic stuff that I've done. Like, I can open a door for myself.
I can open
well
a
done,
door.
me.
So I think that's the reason that I end up on podcasts is because like I'm the guy who opens doors. You know, like.
That's funny.
No, it's one of the It's like I think everyone has such low expectations for people with disabilities, because. But at the end of the day, you just got to do it.
You just got to embrace their questions a bit sometimes, or like, just you've got to choose your moments to either question them, like you be slightly sassy and be like, "Yeah, no, I can do that," or you've got to just like bite your tongue a bit and do you know what, just let them go by their day. They didn't mean it. They're like,
yeah. And as a couple, when you guys are like out together, do you guys get like people asking you questions whilst you're out together about either like about each other or like about your disabilities? Because I know what the general public are like. I've seen it happen, and I love it, but I also kind of hate it. But I like to shine a light on how weird we all are.
It's funny. Like one thing I noticed today is that like I remember I used to get a lot of attention when I went out and about. Everybody asked me, "Oh, what happened to you?" But ever since I've been with Kirsty, they're a lot more interested in the fake leg than they are
the wheelchair.
Than they are in the wheelchair. The wheelchair's a bit boring now. Like,
yeah. I think I get more questions. I think I also get more questions when I'm alone. I think than when I'm with you. I think when we're together, we're just kind of doing our thing and getting on with it, and people are almost like a bit. They just kind of watch from a distance almost. You can see them looking, but they won't like. I think because we were together and we're talking or we're on our way doing something. Like it's not. We're a bit less interruptible. Whereas I feel like I get more questions when it's just me in a lift or like it's just me walking around the supermarket or something. Than I think that we actually get together. I think there's a bit too much to ask. Like they don't know like what.
Don't know where to look.
Yeah,
don't
I don't know
know
how
how
to start.
act. Like almost like shit the bed and then they run.
Yeah, they're like, what tragic oh my days. What like tragic thing happened that made you get in a wheelchair and me lose my leg? Like I think people presume like it must have been the same instance or something.
A really bad car crash.
Yeah, or like something like that, and it's just not.
Do you guys ever tell that tale though? You guys like, oh, like we were like swimming in Hawaii and there was this whole like shark.
Do you know what? It's funny. I've watched Kirsty twice tell the story about like it was a shark attack, and neither time it went well.
No.
Both they're like one was to a kid, and they were just a bit horrified. Nobody found it funny. It's just a bit okay, they're crying now.
I'm laughing really upset because I've done that.
Oh, the kid's crying now. That's not funny. Go.
And I was like, no, it wasn't. I'm really sorry. It wasn't.
Sorry, I lied.
I think because I have quite a boring story, relatively. Like I was born with it, and then I just like had enough, and I decided to amputate it. Like that just leads to too many questions. So I feel like I need to come up with a better story that is like not like can't really be questioned, that just stuns someone enough to like
almost like
silence.
a quick whip that you have like in the back of your like brain. You can just bring it out, almost like a party piece, but not a party piece, where you can just be like, okay, this is the story, and then people will be like,
toenail. So my favorite is telling people that Kirsty has diabetes and she lost it to diabetes.
It's the worst. I'm like, I don't have diabetes. And he tells it to like people that like
you're going to be a doctor.
Yeah.
Come on.
No, but he like tells it to doctors or people that have, maybe we're filling out a form or like, do you know what I mean? Like sometimes you've got to sign something or fill in your medical details, and he'll be like, yeah, it was diabetes. And I'm like, Xander, this could actually influence like, he's a nightmare.
That's so problematic on so many levels. Oh, guys, I have to tell you, I've really enjoyed this. I think it's been a really interesting chat just between how you guys navigate the world together and also like each individually alone, and how it's, you know, completely changed both of your lives, really. I've only got one final question for you, and that is, are you both disabled and proud?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I can speak for both of us, but I'm proud of who we are, and a characteristic of that is that we have a disability. So I'm not like yeah, I'm disabled, I can't move my legs, but I'm like, do you know what? It is a part of who I am, and it's a big part of who I am, and I'm proud of who I am. So I'm proud of my disability.
Yeah, and I think that is part of the reason why we started our page, is to not like shy away from things, but we're actually really proud of the way that we live our lives, the way that we choose to travel, regardless of what people say, the way that we just make active choices throughout our life to not dampen our spirits or not dampen our thoughts of what we can do, but just live life. And and part of that is just being proud of actually what we've both achieved, and sometimes taking a second just to be like, yeah, we're doing okay, we're on track, we're all right,
we did good.
Yeah.
Guys, I've loved it, honestly. I can't believe you're about to go and do a night shift. You enjoy that. But thank you guys so much for coming on the pod. I've loved it. It's been a great chat.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. It's been amazing.
Thank you.